In this demonstration of SelectAI, we're going to look at how you can use metadata to enrich the interaction with the large language model and being able to explain things in a lot more detail. Now, in some applications, the data model is there, you can't change it. Some of them have very kind of obscure type names, whether it's the table names, they may be kind of some sort of letters and numbers or codes or whatever else. And also the column names can be something similar. By looking at them, you don't know what they mean, right? But one of the things you can potentially do to those particular kind of data models and schemas is to add comments. So what I have here is I've set up an example of two tables. So we have, table 1, and we have columns called C1, C2, C3. Right? Those labels actually mean nothing. There's no meaning to it. But what we can do is we can add a table comment and a comment for each column, which gives some sort of descriptive information. So we're providing that metadata to be able to feed to the large language model. But here's some descriptive information about what is actually in those tables. So in this particular case, table 1 will contain department information, our departments within our company. Our second table, again, just called T2, and columns are C1 down to C8, so not very meaningful. And what we can do is we can provide comments for those. So what C2 really contains, it contains information about our different employees. Okay, and then we'll just go along and create some data. So this is kind of similar to the Scott Tiger types and schema, where with departments and employees within that. And then what we want to do is we want to kind of generate our model, but in this particular case we want to include the comments true within this. So when we're sending the tables, so when we're listing out our objects that we want to share, we're also saying is take that metadata, take those comments that are there and share that information and being able to reuse it. So once we have defined that, let me just go and enable that particular kind of profile, and then we can start kind of querying the data. Just like what we've done before. So for example, if we say is, what are departments do we have? We get to list that out. And you kind of go, oh, kind of interesting. What SQL did it actually write for us? So this is where we get to see the department name. Let's get that into a slightly kind of better viewing of it. So we can see that it looked at, it worked out what are the columns that are associated with the different labels, and has provided that more descriptive label for the data that's coming back for us. And similarly, if we kind of do say a select count of our departments, we have 4 departments is correct, and again we could go in and look at the queries within that. So there's lots and lots of other ways we can go about kind of querying our data from, list of cities where departments are located, to to wording it in a slightly different way. So where are the departments located? But sometimes we need to be a little bit careful of how we actually query our data. So for example, can list the manager, the people who are, or list, and if we have a little bit more insight of how the data is, we can see that. And again, by looking at the show SQL, we get to see a bit more insights in what is actually doing it. Where if I just change that to say alright, so what I had in the first one where it didn't bring back any data, if we run that and look at the SQL it generates, we get to see that, well, the problem is to do with the name, right? So we get to see that it doesn't actually bring us necessarily back what we actually kind of want in this particular case. Okay, and then we can go on and just kind of query it in using some of our kind of typical queries. How many employees do we have? How many work in department 30? We have 6. Count the number of employees for each department. get them out. How many employees work in New York? We get to see this tree. How many work in each city? And we can be able to kind of go and explore. And so a little bit of care will be able to get us the information that we actually need. So this is kind of demonstrate the importance of including that metadata, so that descriptive information. So even if your tables had really meaningful table names and column names, it would actually help the large language model to be more accurate by putting in some descriptive information for each, for the table level as well as for each column level.